A man yelled at Maureen O'Hara on set. John Wayne said nothing. He simply stood up and started walking toward that man. Just walking. Not a word. And the entire crew froze. Republic Pictures backlit. Somewhere in the San Fernando Valley. Summer, 1952. The heat rising off the dirt in visible waves. Arc lights blazing. Cameras rolling. 60 crew members scattered across a mock Irish village built from plywood and paint. They were shooting The Quiet Man, John Ford directing. John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara as the leads. A love story disguised as a western, disguised as something older. A film about honor and stubbornness, and the distance between what people say and what they mean. It was late afternoon. The crew had been shooting since dawn. Tempers were short. The heat was unbearable. Ford was behind schedule, which meant Ford was angry, which meant everyone was walking on eggshells. They were setting up for a scene in the cottage. Maureen's character, Mary Kate, was supposed to enter through the door carrying a basket. Simple blocking. They'd rehearsed it twice. The cameras were positioned. The lights were set. But there was a problem with the door. It stuck. Warped from the heat. When Maureen pushed it open during the rehearsal, it caught on the frame, throwing off her timing, making the entrance look awkward instead of graceful. Again, Ford called from his chair. And this time, O'Hara, sell it. Make me believe you actually want to come through that door. Maureen reset. Tried again. The door stuck again. Christ. Ford muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Someone fixed that goddamn door. A grip rushed forward with a plane, trying to shave down the frame. It took 5 minutes. The crew stood around, waiting, sweating. Ford drummed his fingers on the arm of his chair, that familiar sign that his patience was running out. Wayne stood off to the side, watching. He wasn't in this shot. His call time wasn't for another hour. But he'd come to set early anyway. He always did. Liked to watch Ford work. Liked to be around when something interesting might happen. The grip finished with the door. Step back. Should be good now, Mr. Ford. Let's hope so, Ford said. Because we're losing the light and I'm losing my mind. O'Hara, take it from the top. Maureen positioned herself outside the cottage. The assistant director called for quiet. The camera rolled. She pushed the door. It opened smoothly this time. She stepped through, basket in hand, hit her mark, turned toward where Wayne's character would be standing. Cut! A voice. Not Ford's. Louder. Harsher. Herbert Yates stepped out from behind the camera. The head of Republic Pictures. The man who signed the checks. The man who thought that gave him the right to give direction on his own sets. Miss O'Hara, Yates said, his voice carrying across the set with that particular tone of a man who'd never been told no in his life. What the hell was that? Maureen turned, surprised. Ford turned too, his face darkening. What was what, Mr. Yates? Maureen asked, her Irish accent thickening slightly the way it did when she was stressed. That entrance. You walked through that door like you were going to the gallows. This is supposed to be a woman in love. Where's the joy? Where's the lightness? Ford stood up from his chair. Yates. Jack, sit down. Yates snapped. I'm talking to the actress. He turned back to Maureen. We're paying you a fortune to be in this picture. The least you could do is act like you want to be here. The set went silent. 60 people, all of them suddenly very interested in their shoes, their equipment, anything other than the confrontation unfolding in front of them. Maureen's face flushed. Mr. Yates, I've done this scene exactly as Mr. Ford directed. Then maybe Ford's direction is the problem. Yates interrupted. Maybe what this scene needs is someone who understands that movie stars are supposed to have presence. Not. He waved his hand dismissively at her. Whatever that was. Ford took a step forward. Now hold on just a goddamn minute. I said sit down, Jack. This is my studio. My money. And right now, my patience is wearing very thin with the both of you. Wayne didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He'd been standing 30 feet away, leaning against a light stand, arms crossed, watching the whole thing unfold. When Yates started yelling, Wayne didn't move. When Maureen's face flushed with humiliation, Wayne didn't move. But when Yates said, "Whatever that was," with that particular tone, the tone that reduced a woman's work to nothing, that made her feel small in front of 60 witnesses, Wayne moved. He pushed off from the light stand, uncrossed his arms, and started walking. Not fast. Not slow. Just walking with that particular John Wayne rhythm, the easy, rolling gait that covered ground without seeming to hurry. The walk that said, "I'm coming. You can wait." He didn't say a word. Didn't call out. Didn't announce himself. He just walked. And one by one, every person on that set noticed. The script supervisor looked up from her notes. The boom operator lowered his pull. The grips stopped adjusting lights. Ford stopped mid-sentence in whatever he'd been about to say to Yates. They all turned. Watched. Waited. Wayne walked across the 30 feet of dusty backlit between him and Herbert Yates with the steady inevitability of a man who'd made a decision and saw no reason to rush it. Maureen saw him coming. Her eyes widened slightly. She took a small step back, not from fear, from the sudden understanding that she was no longer the center of this moment. Yates saw him coming too. Mid-rant, he caught the change in the room, the sudden shift in attention. He turned. John Wayne stopped about 3 feet from Yates. Close enough to be in his space. Not close enough to threaten. Just close enough to make clear that this conversation was now between the two of them, and no one else. The set was completely silent. 60 people barely breathing. Wayne looked at Yates for a long moment. Didn't say anything. Just looked. His face showed nothing, no anger, no aggression. Just that steady, unblinking attention that John Wayne gave to things that mattered. Finally, in a voice barely above a conversational tone, so quiet that people in the back of the set had to strain to hear, Wayne said, "Mr. Yates, I think you're done talking to Miss O'Hara now." It wasn't a question. Wasn't a request. Just a statement of fact, delivered with the calm certainty of a man describing the weather. Yates blinked. "Excuse me? You're done," Wayne repeated, same quiet tone. "Miss O'Hara's doing fine work. Ford's directing her fine. And you yelling at her in front of the whole crew isn't helping anybody." Yates's face reddened. "Now you listen here, Wayne." "No, sir," Wayne interrupted, still quiet, still calm. "You're going to listen. Because I've been making pictures for 25 years, and I've never once seen a producer improve an actress's performance by humiliating her on set." He paused. Let that sit in the air for a moment. "So here's what's going to happen," Wayne continued. "You're going to apologize to Miss O'Hara. Then you're going to go back to your office. And we're going to finish this scene the way Ford wants to shoot it." Yates sputtered. "This is my studio." "It's your money," Wayne agreed. "But this is Ford's set. And Miss O'Hara is under his direction, not yours. So you can either apologize and leave, or you can keep talking and I'm going to walk off this picture right now. Your choice." The threat hung in the air. Everyone on set understood what it meant. John Wayne walking off the quiet man would kill the picture. Republic couldn't afford to recast. Couldn't afford the delay. Yates had all the money, but Wayne had all the leverage, and they both knew it. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Yates looked at Wayne. Looked at Ford. Looked at Maureen, who was standing very still, one hand pressed to her throat, tears she wouldn't let fall shining in her eyes. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Yates turned to Maureen. His voice was stiff, resentful, but he said it. "My apologies, Miss O'Hara. I spoke out of turn." Maureen nodded once. Didn't trust herself to speak. Yates turned and walked off the set. His footsteps loud in the silence. The heavy door to the soundstage slammed behind him. Still, nobody moved. Wayne turned to Maureen. His voice was gentle now, the hard edge completely gone. You okay, Irish? She nodded. Yes. Thank you, Duke. Nothing to thank me for, Wayne said. You were doing fine. He was out of line. He turned to Ford. Sorry for the interruption, Jack. Ford nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. No apology necessary, Duke. Now let's shoot this goddamn scene before we lose the light completely. Away from the cameras, Wayne made a choice no one expected. The scene wrapped an hour later. Perfect take on the first try. Maureen's entrance was luminous, the kind of performance that makes people remember why they fell in love with movies in the first place. Ford called wrap for the day. The crew began breaking down equipment, coiling cables, shutting down lights. Wayne found Maureen sitting in her canvas chair outside the cottage set, still in costume, staring at nothing. He pulled up a chair beside her. Sat down without asking. They sat in silence for a while, watching the crew work. I've been making pictures since I was 20 years old, Maureen said finally. And in all that time, I've never had anyone. She stopped. Started again. Thank you, Duke. Not just for stopping him. For doing it the way you did. You could have made it worse. Could have turned it into a fight, a scene. But you didn't. Wayne shrugged. Yelling doesn't fix anything. Just makes everyone feel worse. Most men don't understand that. Most men are idiots, Wayne said mildly. Maureen laughed despite herself. They sat quiet for another moment. Can I tell you something? Wayne asked. Of course. During the war, the second one, I didn't serve. Medical deferment. 4F classification. I was making pictures here while other men were dying in Europe and the Pacific. Maureen turned to look at him, surprised by the sudden confession. I've carried that my whole life, Wayne continued, his voice low. The guilt of it. The feeling that I didn't measure up. That when it mattered most, I wasn't there. Duke, let me finish, he said gently. I've spent 20 years since then trying to figure out how to live with that. And the only thing I've come up with is this: I can't change what I didn't do. But I can control what I do now. I can choose every day to be the kind of man who stands up when he's supposed to. Who does the right thing even when it's uncomfortable. He looked at her directly. Yates was wrong. What he did to you was wrong. And I wasn't going to stand there and let it happen just because he signs the checks. That's all it was. Just doing what's right when it's in front of you. Maureen reached over and squeezed his hand. You're a better man than you give yourself credit for, Duke. Maybe, Wayne said. But I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. But what followed would stay with everyone who witnessed it, forever. The story spread. Not through publicity. Wayne would never have allowed that. But through the quiet channels that exist on every film set. Crew members talking to other crew members. Assistant directors telling the story over drinks. Script supervisors sharing it during the next picture. Within a month, every working film crew in Hollywood had heard some version of the story about John Wayne and Herbert Yates and Maureen O'Hara and the door that wouldn't open. But the story that spread wasn't about Wayne being tough. Wasn't about him threatening a studio head. The story that people remembered, that people told and retold for the next 40 years, was about the way he'd walked. The quiet in his voice. The choice to de-escalate rather than dominate. The quiet man rapped 6 weeks later. At the rap party, Maureen gave Wayne a small gift, a silver cigarette case engraved with a single word, gentleman. He carried it for the rest of his life. Years later, when young actors asked Maureen what it was like working with John Wayne, she'd tell them this story. Not the westerns. Not the war films. This. Real strength, she'd say, isn't about being the loudest man in the room. It's about knowing when to speak and when your presence is enough. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Wayne died in 1979. At his memorial service, Maureen O'Hara stood and told the story one more time. About a producer who yelled. About a door that stuck. About a man who walked 30 feet across a dusty backlit and changed everything without raising his voice. The cigarette case is in a museum now. The inscription still visible after all these years. Gentleman. Not gunfighter. Not hero. Not movie star. Just a man who knew that power is quietest when it's real.